Welcome back to Sober City. My name is Seth and I am an alcoholic. Still, today I'm excited to introduce you to my good friend and mentor, Mike D. This guy is a tremendous asset to my sobriety and my life. He is one of those people that just makes me want to be a better person. Last week you got to meet Kip, who is like a brother to me. And Mike D is like a big brother to me. He is somebody that I'm always trying to earn the respect of. He's somebody that I think I try too hard sometimes to impress. Sometimes I wonder if he actually even likes me. But he has always held me to task, which I appreciate. And he's so chill about it. Just a couple weeks ago, we were talking on the phone, and I have this terrible habit of having my ear pods on when I'm on the phone. And so while I'm talking to somebody, I'll be returning emails or doing something on the computer while I'm talking, which I thought was fine. And Mike said, Seth, I feel like I never really have your full attention when I'm on the phone with you, unless you're complaining to me about something. And that was hard to hear, but it's actually absolutely true. And because of that, now I'm much more intentional when I'm on the phone. I try to be. I'm more conscious of that. For a period there, I was always just 5 minutes late to meeting people. I don't know why. I just was not on time. Mike called me out on that. At a point, we're meeting at the gym at 6 a.m. And one morning I got to the gym at like 6:08. And I was looking for him. I couldn't find him. I called him and he said, yeah, I left. I said, why'd you leave? He said, well, we were supposed to meet at 6. You weren't there, so I left. Couldn't believe it. I just expect people to wait for me. And since then, I really try to be more diligent with being on time. Man, that's just who Mike is. That's the role he plays in my life, and I love it. If you follow me on social media, I shared his TED Talk. If you missed it, it's in my social media bios and my link tree. Please take 18 minutes to check that out. I had always associated spirituality with religion, which really messed it up for me. Mike helped me detach that and make it mine. That's what I needed for this to happen. I needed that to work. I'm excited for you to hear his story. He just has so much wisdom and perspective. I'm so grateful that he was willing to do this for me. Appreciate you all listening. Thanks again. I love the support. You all are phenomenal. So, without further ado, life is beautiful. Sobriety is worth it. Thank God for today. This is Sober City. Mr. Mike, appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk for a little bit. Where are you from?
My earliest memories are here, locally. I think I was
Rapid City, South Dakota.
born and raised. The playground's where I spent most of my days. My grandparents had a trailer park in Box Elder. And my mom, single mom, worked like 2 jobs. And we lived in one of my grandparents' mobiles, which was in Box Elder. But my mom did end up marrying an Air Force gentleman. So then I did become an Air Force brat, and we got to do some moving around. Pretty cool. Saw some stuff, did some things. And then we ended up back here because my folks loved it. So we got back just in time for high school.
Either your parents alcoholics?
I don't know. My mom was significantly older than my dad when they got married. So when he got married, I think I was 7 and my sister was 11. He wasn't but 22 himself. So he was a kid. They used to party at the house. When I look back on it, and man, I'd be hard pressed to describe it as anything other than alcoholic drinking. I would have to say that the way that my dad drank, I would absolutely describe it as alcoholic. He got a DUI on base, and they frown on that. It's a pretty big deal. And so he thought, oh, geez, I should probably quit drinking. So he did. So he just did, and went on to be happy and comfortable in his own skin. And productive, and the things that happen when I just don't drink did not happen to him. So despite the fact that I would describe his drinking as alcoholic, clearly not alcoholic.
Yeah, I think that's what they say, right? The difference between an alcoholic and a heavy drinker. The heavy drinker sees the issue and says, this is a problem.
With sufficient cause can stop or moderate.
An alcoholic would say, I just got to get better at driving drunk.
So that is exactly right. And so that's the dividing line between my dad and guys like him me and guys like me.
What were you like as a high schooler?
I was a malcontent, might be a nice way of framing that. Just really all the way up until I found a solution to the problems, the struggles of life.
Figured out how to be content. For a temporary period.
Yeah.
What age did you figure out that solution, would you say?
My solution was drinking, and that did happen. Yeah, that happened in high school. I was freshman, sophomore, probably, maybe a freshman.
What was that first drink like?
I was at a house party. There was a girl in my grade, that I had a crush on. Robin was her name. And she had an older brother who was a upperclassman, super popular high school jock. His name was Ryan. Everybody called him Rhino, and it fit real well.
Yeah.
He was an intense dude. The football team was partying, the popular kids. And somehow I managed to get an invite because I was friends with friends of Robin. Then we got to boozing just a little bit, and everything kind of changed gears right there. Suddenly I was
not so insecure.
Yeah, what was I worried about? Not a person in here cooler than me. What was I worried about? I was a shrimpy little freshman. Not that I'm a bull of a man now, but I hit a late life growth spurt in my early 20s. So at this stage of my life, 5'6", 80 pounds, skinny as a rail. I remember the bigger boys on the football team. I remember at one point they were playing catch with me. They were throwing things to me and I was throwing them back. They were throwing me to each other. And I remember my jeans got ripped. That became a joke. And then I went home and my jeans were like short shorts. And I don't know today if I would consider having the football team shred my pants and throw me high into the air as a successful outing. But at the time, yeah.
But as a freshman, you get a little attention from the upperclassmen.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Off to Robin. You went home liking the alcohol, liking that feeling.
Yeah, I enjoyed that quite a little bit. Although I could be mistaken, but I don't remember being immediately smitten with alcohol. I remember that I had a great time, and it was absolutely a component of that. Moving forward, as we would go out and we would go do fun stuff, booze was always a part of that. So after a period of time, I began to put booze on a pedestal as the key to a good time. But it wasn't initially. It wasn't out of the gate. In retrospect, I realized from that point forward, nothing didn't have booze involved where possible.
This is throughout high school?
Yeah.
Just pretty consistently?
Yeah, as consistently as it can be when you're underage. And
you make it through high school, right?
No. I got a GED eventually. I was a year older than most of the other kids. I was that kid that I never failed or anything. My birthday's in September. I don't know if that's a factor, but I was the first of my friend group to turn 18. So I was 18 I might have turned 18 the end of my junior year. When my friends were 17 and still under the yoke of living at home, I turned 18 and I was free bird. Yeah. So I tried to go to school for a little bit, and it just wasn't, because I moved into a flop house with some real winners. And so I just had a mattress on the floor at a flop house, and there was 2 or 3 mattresses on the floor in that particular room. In that room alone, there was like 3 of us. It was the guy whose name was on the lease was Joe, I believe was his name. And I feel confident saying that Joe had a drinking problem. And then he would just let buddies come crash indefinitely. And for a good period of time, I was one of those buddies. One of the other buddies was a guy that also in the Air Force. he got kicked out. He was a low-ranking administrator at the commissary. I can only imagine what his score was on the ASVAB, but they said, yeah, why don't we just stick you in the grocery store? So I worked at the commissary bagging groceries, and that's how we came into contact. And he was old enough to buy beer. I mean, it was a match made in heaven. Anyway, he got a dishonorable discharge. This friend of mine, this commissary washout, and moved back to Missouri and convinced me I too should move back to Missouri with him. So I was 18 and I moved to Kansas City.
Kansas City, Missouri. Wow.
Yeah.
At 18.
Yep. I wasn't down there but a couple weeks and I rear-ended a guy. I think because I dropped my roach. That's how old I am. I still use words like roach. I'm reaching down trying to find it. Look up. Too late. Bang.
Oh.
Hit the guy. I don't have insurance.
No, I wouldn't think so.
So I get out and I'm thinking, and my initial thought was I was going to have to flee on foot. Clearly, I'm going to have to get out of here.
Yeah.
But as luck would have it, the guy I hit, first thing he said is, hey, man, let's not call the cops or anything, okay? And we ended up becoming friends.
Okay.
And he was a party buddy from there on out. And that Toyota Corolla, I doubt it's still sitting there because I'm sure
eventually
the Department of Transportation in Missouri cleaned up my mess at some point, but I
balanced.
It was done.
They made it to Kansas City to do its job.
Yeah.
And in Kansas City, it was left.
Yeah, exactly right. And
how long were you in Kansas City for?
Oh, maybe 8 months.
Oh, not very long. What prompted the exodus from Kansas City?
So I don't have a job. I don't have a car now. I somehow ended up, the buddy that I was staying with, that I'd moved to Missouri with, we were staying at his sister's place, and they kicked me out because I'd been there like a month and I had yet to give $1 or wash a dish or
not contributing.
So they invited me to leave. So I ended up moving in with some strippers, which sounds cool, but it was not. And it was in a mobile home, and it was the kind of trailer house where you had to be careful where you stepped because you might go through the floor. And so I found myself there, unemployed, just chugging vodka with no car, no prospects, no job. I would call home occasionally. I call my buddies back home. They were in their senior year. While they're doing senior year, I'm doing this. My buddies would be like, dude, you got to come home. That sounds awful. We miss you. I had just about enough. And so I actually broke down, called my mom, I mean, what else do you do? And she got me on a Greyhound bus back home and stayed with my mom and dad briefly. That might have been when I got my GED. And my parents had a graduation party for me.
Oh, nice. Some cupcakes?
Oh, those poor people, man. They were just desperate for a win. That was the best they could do. I came back from Kansas City alive and got my GED, and they're like, we'll take it.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're going to celebrate this.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. A year later, I went to prison at 19 and a half. So I hadn't been home but maybe a year.
So how did you end up in prison?
Same way everybody does. You take the bus. They got a bus that runs right here from the county jail.
Okay, I thought maybe your mom dropped you off.
Okay. She probably offered. God bless her. So I was an angry kid. I was just an angry, entitled, malcontent.
Malcontent, yeah.
Just had this sense the world owed me something, and that by virtue of my greatness, that you guys were all idiots because you couldn't see my greatness, but I was just sure it was in there. I was owed something, and rules didn't apply to me. And whatever other people had to do to get by, what other people weren't allowed to do to get by, these things didn't apply to me. Just a lot of burglaries was my thing. I would reach a certain level of drunkenness where I thought, well, let's go steal some stuff. Breaking into cars was a big thing back then. So I just got caught a lot. I got caught a lot, not near as often as I did stuff, but it was enough to accumulate in a relatively short time a pretty meaningful criminal history. So I would cry and I would play the game and I would just dodge it, and the judge would let me off with probation. Maybe I'd only have to do 60 days in jail, or just always minimal consequences, which was not good because for a guy like me, it only reinforces the idea that I do what I want.
And you're managing.
Yeah. What's the worst going to happen? I'll get caught.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I'll just. It's your way to manage, and you feel like you don't have a problem because.
Yeah. I remember one time I was in county jail. Nobody would bail me out. I knew the guy that worked in laundry. And so the day before sentencing, I had him slip me some extra small jail clothes. I managed to get the smallest pair they could get me. So it just looked tight, and I just it's really emphasized my scrawny little physique.
Yeah. Okay.
And you're not allowed hair care products in there, but you do have conditioner. So the trick is what you do is you can put a little conditioner in your hair. Okay. Or hit my hair on the side, and I wore the smallest jumpsuit that they had available. And I told the judge, please don't send me to the big house. Jesus Christ, look at me.
Yeah.
They're going to hurt me in there.
Yeah, I'm petite.
Yeah, this is not going to go well. Always had an angle. All right, so I go, so I'm out and about car hopping is what we call it. I see a car, and I know an unmarked car when I see one. And so I realize, oh my God, this is an unmarked cop car. Sure enough, the door's unlocked. And so I tore the CB out of the dash, and I peed on the seats. Luckily, I was super duper drunk, because I'm very grateful for the fact that I wasn't clear-headed enough to think of popping the trunk. There could have very likely been things that I had no business getting my hands on, guns and vests and things that would have ended very badly for me. My story would have probably gotten a lot more tragic if I'd have got my hands on such things. But what I did have was in the front seat was a Maglite flashlight.
Yeah.
And it said RCPD. Issue number 35 was engraved on the side. Obviously, they're signed out to the officers. So I kept that as my trophy. And it's all very hilarious. Fast forward maybe 2 weeks, I'm in Box Elder, and I'm trying to get to a party because they got a lot of booze, and there's some girls there I really want to meet. But I don't have a car. So I just went walking around this apartment complex till I found a car with the keys in it. And so I started driving. At that point in my life, I always carried a backpack with me. And the backpack would be a place I could put all my booze, because I was just going to not have booze with me. You know what I mean? I always carried a backpack that had some clean socks, clean underwear, booze, cigarettes. But it was kind of my survival kit when I would get stranded somewhere. But I also kept a flashlight and a pair of gloves in there, because you never knew when you might have the opportunity. Somebody might leave their door unlocked and you're in the neighborhood and I want to just break into a house.
Yeah.
So I had that flashlight in the backpack when I got pulled over for Grand Theft Auto. I got taken to jail on Grand Theft Auto, went through the whole process, got super minimal consequences, but probation was part of it. So upon my release, I went to the evidence room of the police department, which is in the basement, maybe still is, and I went to get my stuff because my backpack's in there. So I'm standing at the window. He comes back and he puts my backpack down, and on top of it, he stacks some my clothes and some Keystone beers that were in my backpack. I'm clearly too young to have beers, so I'm pretty excited that he's giving those back. Then he leaves. Then he comes back with another armful of stuff, and among that armful is the flashlight. I should have just left, but I stood there waiting for what other wonders he was going to bestow upon me.
Yeah.
As I stood there, another officer around the corner looked at me, looked at the flashlight, and said, "Hold on a second." And then he took a close look at that flashlight, and he said, "That's the police chief's flashlight."
Oh, no.
You're the guy that broke into the police chief's car? So everybody thought that was hilarious, not me.
No.
And from there, there's underground tunnels that go all the way from the evidence room to booking. So without even seeing daylight, they can take you straight to booking.
Nope, you go right back. Right back where you came from. Dude. Yeah.
So I got charged.
What are the odds? That was and you peed in it, I recall.
I peed in the cop car. Yeah, they
not just a cop car. It was a chief's car.
It turned out it was the chief's car. I broke in and vandalized the chief police squad car. Made the front page of the paper.
Did it really?
Sure did.
Oh, nice.
Bandit targets top crime dog, I think was the headline. I was the bandit. So that charge ended up being a good thing. That violated the probation I was on for the...
You're on probation for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, for the grand theft and the flashlight charges, which linked me to stealing something out of his car, which is a 4th-degree burglary charge. So that 4th-degree burglary charge was used to violate my probation. So I got sentenced to grand theft. I think I had to do 6 years. And the flashlight I had to do 4 years. And they were consecutive rather than concurrent. Concurrent is the more common, where you can do both sentences at the same time. During one visit to the penitentiary, you're sitting out 2 numbers. What they term box card me. So I had to finish one sentence before I could start the second sentence.
So you're looking at 10 years.
So I was looking at 10 years, yeah.
Without any chance of parole? How does that work?
It's a pretty fluid thing. I don't know where it is now, but it has changed shape many, many times over the years. With overcrowding, I think as long as you don't stab anybody, you're guaranteed parole. In my day, that was not the case. Not a lot of guys got parole. But they did have a thing called good time, meaning that if you were a model inmate, then you would get 3 months of every year knocked off. So conceivably, a quarter of your time eliminated. And whenever you get in trouble, whatever sanctions are imposed, usually like the hole or the SHU, special housing unit, which if prison is a town, then the SHU would be the county jail. So you'd go to solitary, you'd lose whatever privileges, they would take time off your good time. You would lose good time. So second 6-year number, the second number, what the sentence was suspended, meaning I had to sit the 4-year sentence. Had I been on my good behavior, I would have been out in 3. And then once I got out, clear from that, then I got to begin on my 6-year sentence. But the 6 years was, I wasn't incarcerated, but I was on parole. And so it took me 3.5 years to get out because I lost some good time.
What's prison like? What's that 3.5 years like? How'd you manage?
You know, it was terrifying. I am happy to say that I did manage to survive and navigate prison with my manhood intact. I was blessed. Boy, I'm just a chameleon. I can navigate situations, and I just managed to play my cards right, befriending the right people and not pissing off the wrong people, laying low when appropriate and puffing up and acting tough when appropriate. The shocking part about prison, man, the terrifying thing about prison is I thought it was going to be all these criminally insane sons of anarchy, cartel, loco. Like I thought it was going to be these animals. It was just dudes. It was just dudes like you and me, by and large. There were a handful of animals, but by and large, it was just dudes like you and me, regular guys that almost to a man, drugs and alcohol had painted them into a corner that resulted in prison time.
So it wasn't
shocking how many just regular guys. I don't know what that's also been a pendulum that swings significantly over the years. There'll be an era where they push hard to rehabilitate. Then there'll be an era where they push hard to penalize, lock up. The penalties are so severe, then maybe less people will commit the crimes. And then it swings the other way to where they're all just humans and we need to rehabilitate them. We need education. And I was ordered, there was a class that I had to take, and it was not mandatory, but you would forfeit your good time. So I took that class. It took me 8-9 months to finish it. And it wasn't until years later that I realized, I went to treatment. That was treatment. I'd gone to treatment while I was locked up. I had no idea I was in treatment. And for a long time afterward, I would talk to guys that had been to treatment. I think I've never been to treatment. And then I realized, I think that's what that was. So outside of that, there was really no sense of rehabilitation. It was do the crime, do the time.
When you went through that quote unquote rehabilitation, did it have any effect on you? Or
oh, no.
It was just to get that good time, to make sure you didn't lose any good time?
Yeah, it was to make sure you didn't lose any good time. Everybody had to do it pretty much. And again, nobody had to do it, but it was a forfeiture of good time if you didn't. So everybody had to do it. So they would ring the bell and like 20 of us would line up and then shuffle over to that building and sit in that classroom.
Yeah.
And so it was just, it's just what we were doing. And I wasn't invested or paying attention.
So you get out of prison, you did your 3.5 years.
Yep. So I'm on parole. I've got a parole officer.
Suspended 5 years.
5.5.
5.5 years. So you have a strong motivation to not screw up, but now you're in the real world, and you're still that malcontent Mike.
Correct. It was a weird amalgamation of, I was just a punk. I was 19 when I went to prison, and I was 22 when I got out, and I had done 0% maturing. I had no real life experience, like going to a job interview, tying a tie, asking a girl on a date. Like I didn't have any of those experiences. I certainly didn't have them when I was just getting sloppy drunk pre-prison, and you certainly don't have those experiences in prison. I was out and I just didn't know how to do anything, combined with the prison mentality. I don't know how else to describe it. It was this real loss of humanity where you're just real disconnected from your fellows. It would be the lack of any kind of empathy, and I'm angry and I'm entitled to something, and I'm dangerously sociopathic. And I never have been a violent guy, so it's not like I was going to go out hurt anybody. I was disconnected from humanity.
You're out here now trying to function as a 20-year-old man.
22-year-old
man. You're getting a job. You got a job?
Got a job. I had a parole officer that I had to appease. So, yeah, I got a job right away. My folks loaned me some money so I could get a car, and stayed with them for a while till I could afford my own place. I had found a solution of sorts in work. For those that know me now, it's hard to conceive of a time, but there was a time work was my solution. So I worked hard, and I worked sun up to sundown.
Where were you working at?
When I first got out, I got a job at a bag making plant. They sewed cloth bags for some sort of packaging. I don't know what they packaged in these bags. It's a manufacturing plant where these gals would sew them. Pallets would come to us, and we'd have to punch holes and put grommets on them. And
was this a place that they lined you up with, or?
I would assume. I don't know how I would have found it.
Yeah,
I don't know how.
It's kind of like a transitional job.
Yeah,
manual labor. You're making bags. I can't imagine that's the place where you really dove in.
No, although I did meet a girl there, so that seemed semi-successful, and I was making a paycheck.
I think a girl that you had a serious relationship with?
We did end up moving in together, yeah. When I moved out of my mom's house, I moved in with her. Classic. We dated like twice, and then decided, let's move in.
All right.
So she was phase 2 of the solution.
That's right. You eventually leave the bag making place.
Yeah, then I went and worked construction. I had an uncle that worked at a roofing company, so I went and did roofing, and commercial roofing, flat roofing, hot tar. At that time, hot tar was very popular. Now it's all rubberized stuff.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of primarily tar and gravel. Drug and alcohol abuse was rampant, but I was not partaking because I was certainly, not that I didn't want to do that stuff, but I had some sense even then that I got to do something different. I just can't do what I've always done, because I just got a pretty good sense. I would take a look at this crew that I was working on. There'd be 40-year-old burnouts that are mopping hot tar, and I would think, God bless them, I don't want to be a 40-year-old burnout mopping hot tar.
So you're working for your uncle at this construction company, and is this where you kind of pour yourself into work?
Yeah.
And you are dating this girl. So in a sense, life's working out, right?
It's kind of working out, yeah. I had this cellmate one time who, was, I don't know, man, dude had to have been like 70. He was locked up, clearly, because that's where I was. And he was belly aching about the fact that the man, just kept throwing him in jail and he just kept missing things. He would do 3 or 4 years in Nebraska and then he'd get out and he might make it 6, 7 months. And then some new thing would happen. And now he's got to go do a 5-year bid in South Dakota. And then he'd get out for a little bit and then he'd go back to prison. He was doing life on the installment plan. And every time that he would go to prison, he would miss something significant. He missed his oldest son's wedding. He missed the burial of his dad. Major life events he would miss because he was always locked up. And it was all DUIs. And I remember thinking, maybe you should quit drinking. And he looked me square in my eyes and he said, nah, man, I got to quit driving. And he was 100% serious. And I remember just in that moment, this is what this looks like. And that dude, I mean, he had a way bigger nose. Outside of that, he was just me. I was able to see the path that I was on.
So how do you change your path?
And I don't have a clue how to change a path. I don't even know that what I'm doing is wrong. I don't even know the futility of my actions. I don't know that my thinking is wildly counterproductive. I don't know any of these things. I just have this sense that, God dang it, man, I don't want whatever they got. I don't want that. So this is all precipitating and I don't know what's going on and I'm not especially happy. I'm angry, malcontent, verbally abusive, manipulative. My thing is the self-pity thing. I'm certainly a victim of that, but not in the sense where I think poor me. It's the exact same thing and it yields the exact same results, but instead of poor me, it was always how dare they? Who do they think they are? What about what I deserve? If I wasn't surrounded by idiots.
That's right.
Then if they would only recognize my genius, ego for days, sense of entitlement, angry, always thwarted. I should be having this, but I can't because of that. And if these guys would just, then I could. There's happened to be a group of guys there. And I just happened to run into them. And that was the turning point. I met some guys that were my age. They shared a lot of my interests. But what blew my mind was they were sober and they were just laughing all the time and they were living life and they were doing recovery 100 miles an hour and it was their life. And they would. And
in a way you kind of wanted what they had.
Also a factor was the fact that I had 0 friends. I made a conscious choice not to reconnect with anybody that I was hanging out with before I went to prison. So clean slate. Any of the guys I was working with were not going anywhere I wanted to go. So I had 0% friends and I was intensely lonely. The girl and I broke up. Apparently I'm a dick. So we break up. Yeah. And I'm verbally abusive and I'm hypercritical and I'm awful. So she finally, God bless her, she decided this wasn't for her. So now I'm single, and I got nothing going on. I just got nothing going on. And so, I meet a group of dudes my age, fun, just doing stuff all the time. They're doing recovery stuff. They're going to concerts. They're going whitewater rafting and they're just shooting pool, chasing girls, living life in recovery. When I was invited along to that fellowship is 100% what saved my life. Cause I got to tell you, Seth, if a week before that happened, I had met a group of cool dudes that were going to concerts and going camping and going to the bar, I'd have done that. I was just starved for fellowship, friendship, companionship. I was just alone in the world. When I needed friends the most, a group of friends materialized, and damn if they weren't doing sobriety with all the passion that they had. That's what really hooked me into sobriety, was that example. And it wasn't until I saw that and started dipping my feet into it and really taking it seriously and really taking a look at it that I realized how badly I needed it. Because at that point, I didn't even really know that I needed it that bad. Because at that point, I hadn't had a drink in 4 years. So at that point, it's not real high on my radar that I'm an alcoholic.
You know, alcohol to be an alcoholic. Right?
Yeah. So it just never occurred to me. And so I ran into this fellowship of dudes, and it turned out, geez, I'm real alcoholic. and the crazy part is it's got very little to do with how much I drink or when the last time I drank was. The fact that I hadn't drank in years had little, if nothing, to do with the fact that I am 100% alcoholic.
What was that like?
Solution.
What was that like for you when that revelation occurred to you?
There was no lightning bolt moment. I just jumped in the car and just did what they were doing. Yeah. And I did what they were doing because they were doing it. At a certain point, I looked back and I realized, holy cow, look how different things are. And then as the more I got into it, the more I started to really understand the mental part of what alcoholism is, the emotional sickness and unbalance and the perspective distortion. I began to understand that alcoholism has that. Then I started to think, Jesus, I've got that. Twisted thinking, 100%. That victim thing, oh man, 100%. I came to learn that I am every bit the alcoholic they are. The solution then became even more important for me because then I realized, oh man, will I drink again? I don't know. But will I be happy again? No, not without this stuff. When I look back on it now, a funny little quirk that I was wildly unaware of at the time is it turns out that a person, me anyway, can go through the entire process, that entire recovery process, with ego firmly behind the wheel. I was still the center. When I would make amends, because of how great I am. I would make amends. Oh, I went through all this, but I'm going to make it right. And here's your money. Here's your apology. It was all insanely egoic. I didn't realize that there was just some components missing that I didn't even know were missing. I was giving it my best. I went through the process. It wasn't until years later that I realized that I had not really mined the gold that is available. So anyway, when you say doing the process, yeah, to the best of my ability, it wasn't as significant as it needed to be. It wasn't as honest, and 0% humility. And
that's easy to understand. You stopped drinking alcohol at 19. So
19.
When was the last time what would you say your...
March 25th, 1995 I think that's my last drink of alcohol. While in the penitentiary, I managed to come up with some weed on a couple different occasions. Drugs are not impossible to get when locked up. They're harder to get when locked up, but if you know the right guys and you've got enough commissary to trade, then you can get some stuff. After I got out and I was working on that roofing crew, there were a couple times where I got high. The guys around me were doing it, and it just came at a moment where I had no defense. And as they passed it past me, I just took a hit. Weed's not really my thing. Never really enjoyed it. It was an escape, if only temporary. I wasn't sober the whole time. Then years later, I did end up trying to do a marijuana maintenance situation. And so the thing I would always stick to is I haven't had a drink since 1995. But my sobriety date it's a great question. I just celebrated 10 years, and I don't know if that's accurate. It's 10 years, 11 years, something like that.
Still impressive, though. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. I don't mean to be self-deprecating or minimize how amazing it is to be sober for a period of time. I was sober for like 13 years, and then I wasn't sober. Although I didn't tell anybody that I wasn't sober, I was still talking about, well, I haven't had a drink since 1995. Listen to me. I'm trying to do the marijuana maintenance, and that is where I had the good fortune of learning some actual humility. I just didn't know that there was anything missing. And then I went through a breakup. I went through a breakup that I did not want to happen. I did not take it well. We had met in recovery. She was also sober, and she had 5 years. And we were together for 7, 8 years. We had a kiddo together. We got married twice, although neither one of them were legally binding.
Sure.
Classic drunks. It was pretty picturesque. And then she got a toothache, and the doctor gave her one of these. There's these amazing new revolution in the medical community coming from the pharmaceutical end of it that will take away all your pain, safe for all, and it'll basically just stop your pain, and other than that, not change your life. And of course, opiates is what those were. And I didn't know anything about them. She didn't know anything about them. Clearly, there's an opioid crisis. But in the early days, they just came out of nowhere. We didn't even know to stay away from them. And doctors just couldn't hand them out fast enough. Long story short, within 8 months, she had spiraled to an astonishing degree. She had a whole new set of friends. She had a shadow economy with some shadow friends and a whole secret agenda. And so that caused the split. And I took it hard. That relationship was very important to me. She was very important to me. And the family that we had together was very important to me.
A child together.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is your first child?
No, I had a kiddo before that. But somewhere in there, I got married. Before.
No, somewhere before you met this, you got married to somebody, I assume, based on the fact that we skipped that portion.
Super nice gal. Super nice gal. I was just so emotionally dead, having been sober, but not really finding a power greater than myself. That was really a big piece of it, is I never really got the whole higher power idea. So I would pay the lip service. I just never internally in my secret place, I just never really connected with a power outside of me. I could pray all I wanted, and I could say all the pretty things I needed to say, but at the end of the day, I didn't really have a connection with a higher purpose. And so I was kind of...
For the higher power.
I was it. Yeah, there was nothing...
How did that concept of that higher power play a role in that relationship with your first?
So with that component missing, so it was just all about me. So I was still very hard to be around, hypercritical, very judgmental. It was very difficult to do anything right. And I was not the type of guy that was going to not mention it. And it was just tough. Great girl. Super good girl. I picked her. It was a business decision more than anything, really. People around me were starting to get married and have kids, and I desperately wanted to have kids. I didn't have a dad, and I wasn't going to do it out of wedlock. So I thought, God, I want a kid, but I got to get married first. And
I say you didn't have a dad.
Well, my stepdad's amazing, and he is my dad, and I'll fight anybody who says he isn't. Yeah, my dad is an amazing man. I'm blessed to have him. Get that blessing till I was like 8. My childhood until I was 8, there was no male figure. I didn't have a dad. And, I decided I wanted a kid, but I had to get married to do that. So I just looked around for who would be a good mom, who would not get into my business too much, who would let me come and go as I saw fit and not really question my authority, who would keep the house clean so that I didn't have to. It was pretty awful criteria. Part of that was the fact that I had never really been, I'd never really experienced, like you watch movies and you listen to R&B songs, and I don't know what that is, all that love. I had never, when you're psycho and you drive by your house at 3 a.m. to see if somebody else's car is there or something. I've never experienced anything even like that. I just have been very sociopathic. All of those human feelings of love and unreasonable passion, and that just had never happened. And so I thought, if I wait for that to happen, I'm going to die alone. And I also had a pretty robust history of mistreating women. So subconsciously, there was a part of me that thought, I don't deserve that anyway. I mean, even if that was real, it's not going to happen to me, not the way that I've treated people. I just made a business decision who the best applicant for the job, and great girl. I ruined her life, sadly, but we got married. We had a son. That dude is the best. Yeah, we're very tight. I love that kid. He just graduated. I'm very excited.
That's great.
So we didn't last. And then I met my daughter's mom, who, in all those things that I described, I finally felt that right between the eyes, dead in the heart. I mean, I don't know how to describe love, but whatever it is. And it wasn't probably entirely healthy considering where I was in my own spiritual and emotional journey. I don't know how healthy my ability to love was at that point. So I'm sure it was toxic out of the gate, but it was strong and it was fiery and it was explosive and it was life-changing. Life never experienced anything like that. And so then when she spiraled down with opiates and we had to split, I just couldn't handle it. I didn't have a power greater than myself to lean on. I didn't have a solution outside of what I could provide, what I could manage. I was going to this recovery, but I was doing it. I was very much the captain of the ship. Even though I was experiencing a lot of the rewards, I had never taken my hands off the wheel and I had never really surrendered to anything. When crushed by that hardship, I had nowhere to lean except into me.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself.
Yeah. And so I
found a coping mechanism.
Found myself in a place I wouldn't ordinarily be, around people that I wouldn't ordinarily find myself. I'm a funny dude. You might not know that about me now. And since recovery has really become paramount in my life, I am grateful that I'm much more palatable as a human being, but at the expense of me being funny. I was funny.
Saying you're not funny now?
Correct. Yeah. I was mostly like roast stuff. There was a victim. There was always a victim. It was hilarious. We would hang out and you would cry at some point from laughing. My buddy Mitch used to always say, God, it was so fun until it was your turn. And then when it was your turn and you were the guy I was roasting, then it just wasn't fun anymore. I just didn't have a lot of meaningful relationships with anyone. Even my closest friends held me at arm's length to a degree. They loved me. They wanted the best for me. God, I could be hard to be around. So I find myself going through this breakup, haven't laughed in probably a year. Nothing's funny. Everything's miserable. I'm at a campfire during the rally with some people I don't really know. I'm just kind of working with during the rally, and they're having fun. And there's weed going around. I don't like weed, but it's going around, and I say no thanks. And then somebody's like, come on, man, just do it. So I just did it, and I was, god dang, I had those boys rolling. I was hilarious again. There was a magic that was recaptured, and I didn't like being high. I have never liked being high, but I could be funny. And that joyful experience I had that night around that campfire was a one-off. I continued to get high, but I never had fun again. At this point in the breakup, I have had to move back in with my parents. I was like 30 and I'm staying at my parents' house and I'm trying to smoke weed out of the back door. I hadn't smoked weed for 13 years. Weed had made some advancements that I was unaware of. And it wasn't the ditch weed I was getting when I was 19. I would smoke weed and then I would have this 40-second window to hurry up, get back in the house, get back in my room before it kicked in. And there'd be maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes of tranquility.
Yeah.
And then I'd start thinking, and then I would start thinking about who I was and what I was doing. My entire identity at that point was sobriety. Everything that I knew about living life, I had learned in sobriety. Everyone that I surrounded myself with was in recovery. And so that's just who I was. And now I wasn't sober. And so there was this real existential crisis that I don't even know who I am and I don't like what I'm doing.
No, living at your mom's, just went through a terrible breakup, the love of your life, dude. Yeah. How'd you come out of that?
You know what's the craziest thing, man? So then I ended up moving back into Mike because I owned my house. She moved out of the house to move in with her boyfriend.
Oof.
Yeah. So I moved back into my house. So at least I'm out of mom and dad's now. And things had just spiraled so bad in that last year that the house was being foreclosed on. And at this point I was squatting.
Squatting in your own home?
Yeah. Yeah. Because
that's been foreclosed.
Yeah. I'm so far behind on payments. Wow. And while I was moved out, she was supposed to be making payments, but she wasn't making payments. It would be disingenuous to make it sound like payments were regular before she moved out. Like we were already struggling with that in that department. They were foreclosing on my house and there was an end date. So I was basically just squatting in my house. Obviously, the obvious solution is you kill yourself.
That's a reasonable conclusion.
Yeah, what do? You kill yourself. Yeah. Duh. When I realized that that's where we were at, it wasn't a cry for help. And it wasn't even a poor me or they'll be sorry. It was just like, you know what? I gave her hell. I did my best. And I think it's time to cash out and just see what's next. Can't be worse. And I remember I knew exactly how I was going to do it. It was an old trick I had learned in the penitentiary. So that's what I was going to do. So I had it all. I just woke up one morning and I just thought, well, I think it's today. And so I had everything I needed to get it done. Jumped in the shower. I didn't want him to find me and be like, Jesus, Mike really let himself go. So I wanted to be as pretty as possible when they found me. And I just didn't want to, look at Mike. So I had my best shirt hanging in the bathroom, letting the steam take the wrinkles out. I was shaving. I was going to look my very best when they found me. So I came out of the shower and there's Chad, my mentor, just sitting in my dining room table. I had talked to him a couple weeks. I don't know what he was doing there. I didn't call him. I didn't invite him. He was just sitting there. I don't remember what we talked about. I'm sure we didn't talk about what I was doing. I'm sure I can't imagine he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to go kill myself." I can't imagine.
No, you were just...
That was the conversation. But he just hung out with me for, I don't know, maybe an hour. And we were still in contact, just not real constant contact. And he had been pretty clear with, "Hey, man, I'll answer the phone when you call and I love you. But if you're getting high, you're not sober. And I can't really mentor you if you're not sober because we're doing sobriety. But that's not what you're doing. I love you. I'll answer the phone when you call, but I can't mentor you," because he was the one guy that knew. Because I was still honest with him. That was not when I quit. It was shortly thereafter that I quit.
What prompted you to quit?
I would say I went back into those recovery groups because I'd never stopped going to those recovery groups. But I went with a new sense of purpose to those recovery groups. I would go, but not feel any kind of connection. And I desperately wanted a connection, but I just couldn't connect. A real good friend of mine who we had been on quite a journey together. Matt and I we've been on quite a journey together. We've been sober together for a long time. And then I was sober when he was not. And then he was sober when I was not. One of the best human beings you're likely to encounter. There was a guy named Robert who was looking for a roommate. He had a real nice house out north of town. He had moved in. Robert was looking for a couple roommates. So Matt had moved in out there, and Matt talked Robert into having me move in out there.
So you moved in with Matt and Robert?
And they're both sober guys. I moved in there, and I was on fire.
For sobriety.
All the pieces everything that I knew from my previous experience what to do, I did with all my heart. All the pieces that were not present for my first go-round, I chased them and pursued those elements with my whole heart, and I was on fire, and it was a beautiful time. And that was 10, 11 years ago. My daughter's mom, the love of my life, died of an overdose in 2019.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was hard. I thank God at that point in my life, I had the love and support of my friends and of a power greater than myself. So tragic as it was navigatable. Then I remarried eventually. and we had a little baby who just turned, he's 3, so I got a high school graduate and a 3-year-old. I'm all over the place.
Did you experience that similar love with the second wife that you...
It was something far more mature than what was with my daughter's mom. It didn't burn as hot, but it wasn't as toxic. That night, smoking weed for the first time in 13 years around that campfire, every time I smoked weed after that, I never got that feeling again. And whatever I had with my daughter's mom, I never had that feeling again. It was different, but more mature maybe.
How'd you meet her?
Mostly in recovery, but actually I went through a phase where I was going to church real regular, despite the fact that I don't believe in religion. I just really enjoyed church. We have entirely different beliefs, myself and the people that go to church. The overarching themes are very much in line. For me, a program of recovery is the path to God. At the end of the day, we've all got a path to God, and we're all pursuing that path with our whole hearts. I found that delightful. I enjoyed the fellowship and the like-mindedness. There had been some prolonged eye contact, so I certainly was aware of her, and she was certainly aware of me. We had exchanged pleasantries a couple of times, be in the coffee line. And then it was shortly after that she started frequenting rooms of recovery. And then love blossomed. Then we got married. Then we had a son together, did it in the right order.
Where are you at today?
Great gal. She's a wonderful human being. We are not together at the moment. It's not always my alcoholism that I suffer from. Usually it's my alcoholism, but there's a lot of people that suffered from my alcoholism. I have been in a position to suffer from the alcoholism that's not my own. And sadly, that has driven a wedge between my wife and I. She's wonderful, and I love her very much. And I have nothing negative to say about her. I have gotten some wonderful things from this sober life. I have received gifts too numerous to enumerate. And one of those gifts is self-respect. There's a point where I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to subject myself to a lifestyle or a way of life or an environment that I cannot respect myself and stay in a situation. That is a huge component of my daughter's mom, that relationship. I stayed in that way too long. I'm not certainly blaming her or her actions for my smoking weed. That's not at all what I'm saying. I continue to stay in the problem instead of getting busy in the solution. And the results of that are what we talked about. At a certain point, I cannot respect myself and continue to subject myself to the problem.
And how are you today?
I'm really okay. God dang it, Seth. I got to tell you, man, my kids love me. God loves me. You love me. And what do I need? And I don't mean to minimize the significance of a failed marriage.
Absolutely not. No, it was still difficult.
Excruciating.
Difficult. But in the same sense, you have your perspective. And I think a big part of that isn't people think, oh, you maintain sobriety so you didn't relapse.
Right.
Like you maintain your sobriety by keeping that perspective.
Right. Drinking really isn't the big deal. And I know that sounds ridiculous because drinking was very much a big deal. But for me, it's all about my emotional equilibrium. It's all about how I treat other people, how I perceive the world around me, how I react to imaginary perceptions. It's how I take things personally that are not personal attacks, but I take things personally and I feel attacked or shortchanged or thwarted. And that's where I go before I ever take a drink or get high. I will get spiritually and emotionally, I just get ugly. I just get real ugly. I get real.
Yeah, you can sense
my
it.
world gets real small. All that stuff that I described, it manifests itself as anger. I am an angry dude when I am not spiritually balanced. And for me, what makes it so damaging is that I don't keep that to myself. I become abusive with that, and I become belittling, and I become hypercritical, and I become sarcastic, and I become impatient.
You have to be proactive, and it is a spiritual fitness when we become God. I mean, that's really what we do.
Really, right.
That's why it's important to realize that we're not, and we don't have the ability.
And I struggle with that idea that for a long time it was hard for me to understand that, because I don't think I'm God. I don't make the earth rotate the sun. I'm not in charge of physics. I don't think I'm God. When it comes to, I think that whatever I think is the right thing, you have two choices. You can agree with me because you're smart, or you can disagree with me because you're an idiot and be wrong. Anytime I expect anyone to be anything other than who or what they are, when I expect them to be anything other than who or what they are, that's me playing God. And that's exactly what I do. And so the crazy thing is, I don't mean to sound cocksure, like, oh, I'm never going to drink again, because I don't. That isn't so much the focus of my daily maintenance. But the next drink is, if everything tanked today, way closer than the next drink is being restless, irritable, discontent, angry, abusive, demeaning, minimizing, hurtful. That's what's just around the corner if I don't act right. The drink, that's probably 3 or 4 corners down.
Yeah, that's a ways off. When I relapse, I'm not thinking about drinking.
Exactly.
I mean, laying in bed all day, just miserable because I
Right.
don't know why I can't.
Right. Just be an Eeyore. Just laying in bed being Eeyore.
Mike, I appreciate you, buddy. Thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable, being real.
Yeah, I thought this would be like, I thought this would be a lot funnier or something.
I was expecting you to be a lot funnier, but you weren't stoned. So
Yeah.
you were
I
sober.
feel like my life story is
It
not.
started out pretty well.
It felt not real interesting as it was coming
It
out.
was really good. You have some great perspectives, and you're the real deal, and I really admire you and respect you, and you're a tremendous part of who I am now, and I'm grateful to you.
When you edit that, can you play that part twice?
Yes, but I'll
And can you
emphasize.
Yeah. Can you adjust the level so that part comes up louder and bassier?
You got it, buddy. All right, dear. I love you, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.